Depression, yes, it does hit both genders, and yes, it will hit all age groups, but it seems that women have got their own area of concern. Basically, they take a lot onto their own shoulders, and being the sort of the family glue, for the want of a better term, invariably they won't show it to anybody. So what we've done is we've gone to some experts to find out what specifically we can talk about as far as women and depression.
I've got my own unique view on what depression is, and I'll let you know, but to set the stage, let's talk about physically for a minute. Physically, you don't go to the doctors every time something's wrong, because your body's pretty good at healing itself. But occasionally it can't, so you go to the doctors and get a bit of extra help. But imagine if you'd never been to the doctors your whole life. Imagine what state you'd be in physically. Like, I don't even know if I'd still be alive, but if I was, it would not be a pretty sight. Now, that's a state some people are in emotionally, because it's the same with emotions. A lot of emotions, we can process them, resolve them, come out the other end on our own. You know, some take a bit longer than others, like grief, but we're pretty good at getting over them ourselves. But occasionally we can't. Do we have the culture of taking you to see someone to help with your emotions? No, we don't. So they stay with you, and they stay with you. And every year you live, not only are these emotions staying with you, but you're kind of adding more every year, and it builds up to become this overwhelming burden. One of my clients described it as like a backpack full of rocks that she'd been carrying around with her. And she said, I didn't even know I had it until you took it off me, which is pretty cool. But I think that's a really good analogy. I love that one. Like, to me, depression is like, some people call it, like a black overcoat. But to me, it's like a backpack full of rocks.
It's quite an important tool to be able to do, is just to listen to people. And then, of course, if they have mental health problems or depressions, then we need to decide, do we refer them to a counsellor? Do they just need to talk to someone who is not a friend or a family member? Sometimes they just need to talk. It's interesting, sometimes just by talking with people and talking through their problems can give them some help as to how they sort out their problems. If someone is obviously very depressed, then of course we need to decide whether we refer them for counselling immediately, or do they require some medications. And sometimes the medications might be just to help them sleep and switch off their brains so that they can cope a bit better. Or we sometimes immediately will put them on to an antidepressant. So there are a lot of options.
So what are the symptoms?
How do you know the difference between being unhappy and being depressed? And I think unhappiness doesn't make your life worse, but depression does, if that makes any sense at all. Let me explain. For instance, one of the things that we can do when we're depressed is we look for ways to distract ourselves from those thoughts and feelings we don't want to have. And that can be very destructive, because we'll look to things like alcohol. Why do so many people come home on a Friday night or go out on a Friday night and have a few drinks? Because it works fantastically. It blocks out all those thoughts and feelings about work that we don't want to have, and it keeps them away. Not saying you should do that, I'm just saying it works. So do drugs. So does smoking. Smoking is well known to dampen down uncomfortable feelings and alleviate stress. But the problem is it's temporary. And as its effects wear off, much like alcohol, you have to re-tranquilise yourself with something else. But there's other things that we can do, like, for instance, we might overshop, spending every time we go out shopping. I get a real sense of joy when I buy something that I really like. And so that can be like some person's equivalent of drinking or smoking. Gambling, of course, or there's the whole overworking or keeping busy. That's where you get gym junkies or people that just never relax and they're always doing something. One of the reasons why we're always busy, and we all know people like this, is because we don't give ourselves time to think or feel. So that can be a symptom that we've got something more than just a generalised unhappiness, when we're actually doing something that is harming us or the people around us in some way.
Those who are suffering from it will invariably hide it.
Some women, of course, will hide it. There is the pride aspect for many people, that they don't want to be seen to be weak or not coping. Many people don't, are great at putting on a good coping face and are good at hiding the way things really are going. It's only really people close to them who will recognise, well, there's something not quite right, and that's usually, of course, a partner or a close family member.
We do hide it. There's a culture, as you know, Rob, of, whenever, if I say to you, how are you today? You're going to say, good, thanks. And there's a culture of, oh, if I say that I'm not good, what will they think? And so we hide it and we put on the brave face, and especially if we're an outgoing, sort of bubbly type of personality, we tend to think that's what people like about me. I've got to give them that. If I'm not that person, they're not going to like me at all. So I have to keep being that person. And so we put on our mask and we build our energy up when we're out. And that actually makes us feel even worse. That actually makes our depression worse when we're playing that role, because it's using up the little energy that we have. One of the things about depression is that it does sap our energy. And so we have to, you know how you've got a money budget and you have to spend your money wisely? Well, we've got an energy budget as well. And we have to spend our energy wisely. And when you are unhappy or depressed, you've got a lot less energy. So spending it on playing the role that you think people want you to play is not a wise use of it.
And we don't talk about it.
And that's partly due to the culture, that we feel this pressure to be this happy person that we think everyone wants us to be, and that they won't like us or think that we're a failure if we're not. So the culture comes into it. And the second reason we don't often talk about it is talking often doesn't help. Here's an interesting fact, and some people may disagree with this, but this is a fact that I've read somewhere. Research shows that the average amount of time someone goes to therapy for is 10 years. Well, something's not working. Perhaps this is an American figure, but something's not working if you're going to therapy for 10 years. Often just talking about our problems doesn't change them. And so, you know a wee bit about me and what I do, Rob, and and I'm not a counsellor. I don't have people come to me and just talk, because I don't see a lot of value in that. They can do that, but I like to actually change the reasons why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And I use a form of energy psychology known as EFT. And I'll just quote Dr. Bruce Lipton for a moment, who's an amazing man. And he says, and this is no offence to any counsellors, because there's some wonderful ones out there who are very holistic, but some of them are working just with the mind. And of course, we're not just a mind, are we? I mean, we're mind, body and spirit. And so he says, this is a quote from Dr. Bruce Lipton, he says, the problem with counselling is you go along and you talk about things. And you come to some realisations and you think, now I understand myself. I am the way I am because this happened to me or this doesn't happen to me. Now I understand myself. I can change, you say to yourself. And he says, no, you can't. Because a lot of your behaviour, thoughts, emotions, behaviours are programs running in the subconscious mind. And he says the subconscious mind is like a tape player. It can only play the program it's got. You can talk to a tape for as long as you like and ask it to change, and it can't. It can only play what's loaded onto it. And he says the subconscious mind is like that. So just realising and saying to yourself, oh, I can change, will not work. And he says EFT, which of course is the form of energy psychology I use, he says EFT is the equivalent of pressing the record button and recording over it. So that's why I use this form of energy psychology. But you're right that just talking often doesn't work, and so people don't go. And we're talking about culture again. I mean, if we talk about people like the police, they see some terrible things, some quite traumatic things. And they have quite a culture, so I'm told, that they don't go and talk about it. Because they've got the culture of let's just be tough and we'll go and have a beer and, we'll just forget about it. And I think a lot of rural people have, because, it can be a bit of a tough life. A lot of rural people have that, like, let's just be strong. No, we won't talk about it. There's other people going through this. They seem to be coping. Oh, they seem to be coping. Oh, he seems to be coping. Perhaps I better cope as well. I'll just tough it up and get on with it.
And of course, by not talking about it, that can lead to a suicide situation that nobody saw coming.
Yes, because they've been wearing their mask when they're around other people. This mask that I'm doing well, I'm happy, perhaps the extrovert mask. And yet inside they've been getting worse and worse and worse, because that's been sapping their energy and making them feel more depressed, because the more they play that role, the more they realise that they can't keep playing it. And the more they feel like a failure and a fake. Fake is a word I hear a lot. A lot of people say to me, I feel like a real fake. And that's not a way to live your life. We've got to be authentic. And so people don't see it coming, partly because people are hiding it and wearing the mask, partly because people are using, I call them tranquilizers, things like alcohol, you know, shopping, eating. Oh, we forgot to mention the eating one before. Overeating or comfort eating is a way also, much like alcohol and smoking is, of distracting us from thoughts and feelings we don't want to have. Works wonderfully. The funny thing is, you don't eat that bit of chocolate cake and then feel better about yourself. You actually feel worse. But you're feeling worse about something completely different to what you're feeling bad about before. So it actually still works.
So therefore the subject really is talk to somebody. Just find somebody who you think will understand.
Well, if as a human being you are feeling really low on mood and you're feeling hopeless and miserable and it's persisting and it's not just transitory, then you do need to have the courage to ask for assistance, because there is plenty of assistance available if only you ask and you know who to ask assistance from. So the first thing, as I would say, would be to have the courage or have the strength to, I would say, go and see your doctor. And tell your doctor that you're feeling, how you're feeling.
Often, depression can be put down to the fact that we are putting too much emphasis on ourselves and the risk of failure.
If I asked everyone in the room what their idea of success was, everyone would have a different answer. And there can be problems that arise when someone's version of success means this and I can't get there. So if I can't get there, I have failed, I'm a loser, I'm not good enough, are all thoughts that we have about ourselves. So you will not be happy if your version of success is too high and too unachievable. And we get those from all sorts of places, from our parents, from culture as well. And one of the things I do with my clients is help them to change their definition of success so that they don't feel that they're failing. And the other interesting thing is that a lot of research has shown that happiness has nothing, well, not nothing, happiness has only 10% to do with your life circumstances. So if you're doing really, really well, you're achieving, you're financially well off, everything's going great, perhaps you're in a great relationship, that accounts for 10% of your happiness. 90% has nothing to do with what is or isn't happening in your life. 90% is to do with your mindset, and that's how to be happy is actually a learned skill. It's just the problem is that most people haven't learned it. And if your parents didn't know how to be happy, how can they possibly teach you? I didn't learn how to be happy till I was in my 30s, so it was a bit late in life.
Sharon, as a young woman, went through some very serious cancer. Let's hear her story and what got her through her depression.
When I was only 32, I was given just a few months to live with cancer. I was in a lot of pain. I was very sick, couldn't breathe without coughing. I was hospitalised just about full time, and I had my 3 children at home waiting for me and wondering if Mum had come home at any stage soon. And things did get so tough at times that I actually didn't want to go on. The pain was just so bad. I thought it's got to stop, but I knew I had these 3 little girls at home and I had to go home to them. They just pull you through the other side and keep me going when I would have given up otherwise. It's the physical is, how can I go on in this physical state? Will I get to go on? They've told me I can't. They've said there's no way you can live through this. Just to be as comfortable as possible, get your affairs in order, and ring us when you need to get away from home. But then they decided to give me some treatment that may make me a little more comfortable, and it did. It worked miracles, and I did get better eventually. But in that dark time in hospital for a whole year, I'd only get home for a couple of days at a time, and then I'd be rushed back because something would go wrong. The balances would get out, my blood pressure would drop or something like that. I'd get dehydrated and get rushed back to hospital. And there was no certainty in life, there was nothing to say, I will get home. And the thing that I had to hang on to was being a mum. And when I was home, even though I was bedridden, there was times when, you know, the kids would come bounding into my room to ask something, and I'd, you know, wrap them up in my blankets, and my mum would come in and say, now, don't disturb your mum, she's not well, you know, you come away and let mum sleep. But really, it was all I had to hang on to. I wanted to still be a mum, you know, and I didn't feel anything could take that away. I was a mum. And it just, yeah, I fought for those kids tooth and nail because I wasn't leaving them behind. Who knows what would have happened to them? You know, all the thoughts that go through your head, what will happen if you're not there. They all went through mine, and yeah, and I did. I thought at those times when I felt I couldn't go on, that was what pulled me through.
And her husband wasn't spared either.
My husband's a lovely, lovely man and an extremely successful farmer. He makes me proud every day. But he started getting grumpy, and nobody knew why. There'd been a family issue that I thought had triggered this grumpiness, but I thought, oh, it'll go away when he sort of gets over the hurt. And he got grumpier and grumpier, and weeks stretched into months, and months turned into years. And, you know, he lost his joy for life. He wasn't, when the grandkids bounded in, he didn't enjoy them leaping on him anymore. He'd sort of go, oh, you know, don't we get any time to ourselves? And he'd always loved them being there. It was, you know, his absolute pleasure time. And eventually we realised that maybe he were a little depressed for whatever reason, but in him it came out as grumpy. Just lost his joy and happiness. And we worked our way through that idea that was possible, and once it was recognised and we could move forward, he came back, and he's a lovely man again. And he's back to the man I married 30-something years ago.
So where do we look for help?
That's important to understand, that many people hide their depression because they don't equate a depression as they would with any other illness, such as having high blood pressure or diabetes or angina. They think it's just something that I can pull my socks up and I need to be stronger and tougher and I'll get over it. When in fact your central nervous system and the bag of chemicals and neurotransmitters is quite complex and can be determining your mood and your outlook on life and how you're interacting with other human beings. So then there's something wrong, and there is assistance available. All I would say from a GP's perspective is I would like to be seen as to being accessible. You come and ask for an appointment and we will see you. And so access is important. You need to be able to access someone to help you. You need to feel welcomed and not judged. You know, don't judge people because, you know, it's always, you could be me. I mean, I could be you. That's what I always think. And I could be you easily. So how would I feel if I were you? I would really like to be able to come to someone who made me feel like you're not alone. And we've all got these problems. And so we don't pretend that none of us are immune from it. And then you just want someone to help you, don't you? So what's the help going to be? Maybe some medications, maybe just listening in a conversation, or maybe referring to someone who is quite independent of your friends and family and social surrounds. And maybe that's all that's required.
There are people in the rural districts who are there to help.
Well, I believe you should talk to anybody you can. I think you need to be brave enough to say, I think something might not be right. But for farmers, these rural support trusts are very helpful, and they can take you right to the right people. Your GP is there to help you. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more forceful and actually say, you know, I really think I may be a little depressed or something. Otherwise it might not be recognised as that. And Rural Women, we're a great networking team and we just love standing by each other. And we also have places that, you know, things we can tap into to help. So there's many places, there's, you know, Lifeline, lots of support places, but even if it's to talk to a friend and say, you know, I think I'm feeling a bit down in the dumps.
She's really talking about that feeling of just being flat.
And sometimes it is just flat, or, you know, you just drop something and you think, oh, when you should have just gone, oh, I dropped that. You know, things affect you that maybe don't need to. The little things start worrying you instead of the big things that used to before. And I think, you know, I believe we all go there at some stage to some degree, but it is recognising it and knowing that you can share it and other people can help you.
Now the good thing is that there is protection out there. You can actually buy some insurance which is going to get you through when you are in trouble.
Yes, mental health. Mental health covers things like stress, anxiety and depression. It's interesting that that's not an ACC event. So for ACC, to be covered under ACC, that has to be an accident, and mental health is not an accident, it's an illness. So that doesn't come under their categories. So really important that people have a contract that's based around illness and injury. And being self-employed, one of your biggest risks is mental health. So a lot of pressures on people that have got their own business. Obviously it's stressful, they can be, you know, get anxious about their business and get depressed. All of those things go hand in hand. So for a self-employed person, it's really important that they've got some good covers in place that will protect them at those moments. Statistics from the companies show that for disability covers, about 17% of their claims are based around mental health. So that's quite a high proportion of claims down to that area. And not just female based, there is a lot of men as well, so where people might think that that's something that's more based around a female, that's not the case, it's really widespread.
So I do trust that that has helped. Just remember that you do not need to hide it, because there's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's the old story, if you hurt your leg, you get it treated. If you hurt your heart, or there's a problem with your heart, you get that treated. If there's something wrong with your head, it's not a stigma. It's just that it's something that needs to be fixed. There are a lot of people in your corner. All you've got to do is to recognise it and then take whatever action you feel comfortable with.